Hello, friends. How are you today? I hope you're doing well. I am going to come back later to read from chapters 13 through 15 of my debut memoir, Dark World Light Work. But I only get like 5 minutes on this before the camera shuts off, so I have to talk about the chapters and then read them in a separate video. I wanted to remind you guys that there is a soundtrack on Spotify that goes with these chapters. So from chapters Meet Cute to Rebirth, that is about a relationship, and there is a Spotify soundtrack called Bartholomew that tells the story of that relationship. The funny thing is, I made the soundtrack about 2 years after the relationship. And this relationship was what I guess is referred to as a twin flame. We had this very crazy telepathic connection where like we would think the same thoughts. We lived kind of like parallel lives, and it seemed like we'd been doing it for years before we even knew each other. Like if I spilled something on my gray t-shirt one day, he would text me like, I spilled something on my gray t-shirt today. It was really interesting. And I have had a relationship like that with a guy in high school that we were like friends. And there's something about it where it's like this deep, intense connection. And you feel like in this situation with Nemo, I felt like we were meant to be together. There was a part of me was like, there's no way that we could have all this in common and have lived these lives like this and not meant to be together. So I went for it, and it was quite insane. But the telepathy does inform the story, because we did have a telepathic connection. I have had telepathic connection with people in the past, not just those two guys, like family members and things like that. And the soundtracks become a telepathic connection. I made a soundtrack a year before the shooting on the Las Vegas Strip that was about it, and I kept trying to figure out what was going on. I kept listening to it over and over again. And finally, and even when it happened, I didn't realize until months later that the soundtrack was about it. And so if you see the soundtracks, if you are tapped in at all, you can see that they are clairvoyant. And it was after I made one that was about the history of human trafficking in the United States that the government started knocking on my door. So if you look at my Spotify, it says, if you look at my Tumblr, it says go to Spotify to see why Big Brother came knocking. That's exactly why they came knocking. Which brings me to another point about the surveillance sector, which I was talking about yesterday. Once they realized that my connection was not a physical one, that it was more spiritual, they enlisted special operatives to try and remote view me to get insight into where I was getting my information from. They would not stop. They literally hired people to try and establish a telepathic connection with me. And when I don't think that worked to the level that they wanted it, they hired famous people like celebrities to try and use some of my content online, which would catch my attention. Then I would have a connection with them, and then they could figure out what was going on with me. It got insane, and it turned into spiritual warfare, which is something that everybody faces, because this kind of brainwashing, this attempted suggestion in your life is part of commercial programming, which is basically trying to get you to buy things, trying to sell things to you, and trying to figure out who you are and exactly what you're into so that they can sell and buy your energy. That's how it works. And it's something that is an offense to more than just me, which is why I am drawing attention to it in my debut memoir, Dark World Light Work, which I will be reading from very soon.